Hey, Catherine Ferris here from Marketecs. Today we're diving into how to build a fully automated and functional lead funnel, from capturing your leads to follow-up sequences, all inside of GoHighLevel, or better yet, our version, Responsiveness Engine. So the plan is to cover lead pages, forms, tags, workflows, and lead scoring, which I actually have another video on, all in one clean sequence. Step one will be to create your lead capture form. Step two will be to create your landing page. Step three will be to create your thank you page or confirmation page, whatever you prefer to call it. Step four will be to set up your automated workflow. Step five will be to add pipeline triggers. These are optional but recommended. Step six is a follow-up sequence and timing. Again, kind of optional, but highly recommended. Then we'll be showing you how to measure and optimize your funnel performance. So if we're ready, let's jump in and see what sort of results we can drive. Okay, here we are inside of Marketecs Engine, which is our version of GoHighLevel. And whenever you sign in, you typically arrive on the dashboard. So as I said, one of the first things I like to do when I'm building a new lead funnel is I like to come in and I like to create a form, because this is the first step of what somebody's actually going to take action on, is they're going to give us their name and contact information. And when I say this is the first step, I guess it's technically the second step. They're going to see your content first. And so you're going to turn them into a viewer or somebody who's interested in your information, from that into an actual contact or a lead by getting their information. So naming conventions are really important. We're going to start by making sure we give this a really good name. In this case, this won't be a really good name, but I think you'll get the point. All right, so we've renamed this Lead Funnel 1, and we're going to call everything as we're building this out Lead Funnel 1 so that the naming is consistent and we can find all the connected pieces. Now, the first thing we have here is first name. I do like to make this required because in the future follow-ups, I like to actually be able to call people by their name. Last name, it's optional right now. We could make it required if we would like to. Phone number, again, this might be something that I decide to make optional, sort of optional but recommended. Email is required. And then I have these consent boxes, and because I'm in a demo account right now, we actually have a couple different consent boxes showing up, a couple different languages. So I'm actually going to remove one of those and just keep the one. We can update the content of this over on the side here. Let's see if there's a place that you want to add your actual name or anything. There's kind of a space missing here. I'll add that in. In this particular case, there really isn't a from this company. Sometimes they come that way. So I might say, I might actually just type in from Marketecs. So I'm being very specific around who they're consenting to receive information from. These links at the bottom and some of the default forms, these are going to need to be changed or even just removed. That's also optional. You could actually take your privacy policy and put it right in the consent box as well. But it's not a bad idea to have these available. So if you highlight them, then you can change the link that goes to that page. In this case, I think I'm just going to remove them for now. All right, so there's my form is built. And if I did want to add additional information over here on the quick add to the left, you can put in multi drop down radial. You could ask for a rating. There is address, if that was important, maybe company name. This actually could be an important one in a lot of cases. So you just drag and drop as I just did. So once you have your form built and you're happy with it, and maybe green isn't your color, so this would be another thing to consider adjusting. Maybe I don't want the green box. You can put your actual hex code in here, or you can pick roughly from what you have there. And maybe I want download now as my text. So there we go. Our form is pretty well built, quick and easy, but built. Now, if I go to settings, this is where you're going to decide what sort of message they get after submitting your form. Now, when we build a funnel, we can actually send them to another page. So this may not matter quite so much if you're planning on putting this form inside of a funnel. If you're not putting this form inside of a funnel, this message or whatever URL you redirect to here matters a lot. So in this case, we are building a funnel, so I'm going to leave this right off. And there's a few other settings in here. For this message, you can add some styling. You can put in your Facebook pixel ID, which is going to help track the process that it's been through if you're running ads, what you want to call this for Facebook ads. What is this stage considered? Is this where they completed a registration? Is this just a page view? What is this going to be for the page? And then actually for the form submission, what is this going to be? And a lot of times for the initial page, I would say page view for just looking at the form. And then for submitting the actual form, it's either going to be submit application or complete registration if it's like a webinar registration or something like that. Sticky contact, if this is a returning user or somebody that's already in your contact record, this is going to automatically fill in their name and email and all those important details. We have run into problems keeping sticky contact on if they use a different IP address. If there's more than one person, say in an office on the same IP address, then your contacts are going to start to get mingled. Most of the time, 90% of the time, we leave sticky contact off. We do like to leave enable time zone on, hoping that that will actually give us a little bit more information and help us out there. All right. And then submissions is actually just going to show you your submissions as they come in. So we're going to save our changes on this lead funnel 1 form. Once you've saved your changes, you can hit preview to go see what this is going to look like. And you can see, I mean, it's pretty basic. We did not add a title to this because we're planning on putting it on a funnel page. There is still a box shadow around this. That's some formatting details that could be edited out. And other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So your integration here, if you were not putting this on a page inside of GoHighLevel already, then you would want some of these options, whether you want to grab the embed code to put on, say, a WordPress website, whether you want to share it directly, either on social media or send it in an email. Here's where you would get the link for that. And then you can actually email it to someone using a template or choosing from your templates, that sort of thing. The embed code is probably one of the ones that we use most often, and usually putting it into a WordPress website, or if we have a button on a page in WordPress, we'll just grab the link to put behind the button. So those are pretty common. In this case, where I didn't put any sort of title or heading, I don't really want to use this form on its own. It really needs to be embedded on a page. If I had put exactly what it was at the top, then that would be different. And to put exactly what it is at the top, I can drag and drop some text here. When I click on it, I get the option to edit this text. And in this case, I'm building a lead magnet as the starting point for my lead funnel. So I'm going to call it my awesome lead magnet. I can change the font here. I can change the color. I can change the size, all of this within the form settings. And now I'll save, and this is just going to look better all on its own. Instead of having no title at the top, it's now going to have a title and download now. I could also add a description below this, and this could literally be shared as is, as a form for people to opt in and get my awesome lead magnet. All right, some additional settings here when you're building forms. So we had the add form elements, and that's where we're in right now. There's quick adds and custom fields, which are fields that we've used previously on other forms that we might want to reuse. Then next we have some conditional logic. So depending on how somebody answers a question, we could send them to a specific URL, disqualify a lead right here, hide or show fields, and custom messages. So there's a little bit of conditional logic there. And then finally, there is email notifications and autoresponders. So if you're just doing a quick notification internally saying somebody filled out this form, this is a great way to do it without building out a whole workflow just for an internal notification. And if the autoresponder, again, was just a single message and you weren't prepared with multiple messages to send after an opt-in, then this is another quick way to send a single message off. And then really all you have to do is build your form. So you've got this standalone form, you've got the notification, you've got the autoresponder. You could run with this and actually promote your lead magnet and start adding context to your CRM right here by just building this form out. We can look at this both in mobile mode and desktop mode just to see the differences as well. And at any point, if you make a mistake, there is version history. We can always backtrack. Maybe I realized I did not want to put that header on there. Now, back under styling options, there are a lot of different styling options on here. One of the things I'm noticing is I kind of have a lot of space at the top of my form here. And part of this under style is that I have a 30-point padding. So I'm actually going to bring that down to 0 just to tighten that up. And then I'm actually on mobile right now, so on the desktop version, I want to do the same. And then 40 points actually looks good on the side for me right here. But if you wanted to increase that more, you could. And again, you could do separate settings for mobile versus desktop. And you can see the little switch between here. And it's still at 40 on mobile, which I think looks pretty good. You could set your label widths and field spacing, and then you've got colors and background. So you've got your input and your font colors. You can actually add images and headers, all of this. And if you wanted to promote Marketecs Engine, you could add a little agency branding there. The other thing they have in here is some pre-built themes that can be added. And here's where we would control that shadow color. So we would say we want no border, and then I would bring the shadow color all the way down to 0. And now when I embed it on my page, I'm not going to have that added shadow. Then there's lots of other border widths, corner radiuses. You can change the specifics around your input fields, labels, all of these things. But honestly, if you're happy with the way it looks, you can just save. And now again, I will go back to my preview and you'll see that this border and shadow is gone. It's going to sort of melt into the page, just like that. All right, so now that I've created my form, the next step is to go over and look at funnels. So within funnels, you're going to want to, this is where you're going to create your landing page. And we have a couple examples here, but we'll start with a new one and we'll start from blank and we'll call it lead funnel 1, just like we did our form. When we click create, this is going to start the process of creating our funnel. Now, there's a couple of options across the top here. So we have our steps, which are going to be our funnel pages. There's going to be stats that will show up after we start sending traffic to our pages. There's going to be a list of sales if we have an actual product for sale attached to this. Security and events have to do with meta tracking, but settings is probably the next place that I would direct your attention to. Here you have the name, which we already gave our funnel, and then the path, which is going to be part of the URL. And so this is what people are going to really see. This is the link that you're going to be promoting. So making sure you're happy with this name, making it as short as possible always feels very important to me. You're going to connect any domain that you have right here. You're going to select the one you want to connect to. A lot of our clients have multiple domains connected depending on what exactly it is they're promoting. And then you're going to want to put your favicon URL here. Your favicon should be uploaded to your media storage. You would go to your media storage, grab the link to that image, and just put the link right in there. Your header tracking code is where you would put your Facebook tracking code or where you can put any Google Analytics code, anything like that. You can also choose if you want to have a chat widget attached to this page. You would have to build the chat widget kind of like we just built the form. You'd have to build it previously and then connect it here. Once you've updated all your settings on this page, you want to click Save. And now we're ready to add our first step or our first page to the funnel. So our first page is going to be our landing page. Now, once you set that up, you will have the option to use existing. If you have a landing page format in your websites or in a previous funnel already, you could actually grab that and modify it and cut your time way down, or you can create from blank. And for the purposes of this, I'm going to create from blank. We're going to keep it very simple here. Over on the left-hand side here is where you're going to find all the elements that you can add. Over on the right is where we're going to do all of our editing and settings. So we can quick add any of these items here. There are some, so you've got sections, you've got rows within sections, you've got elements within rows. And then there are pre-built items. So we could actually take something like the footer and preload that in. This is going to look nothing like we want it to right now, but this is all stuff that you could update. And then let's see, maybe we have a header. And actually on most landing pages, I don't recommend a full menu. probably more like just a logo and the product name. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I've changed my mind. So this looks way more like something I would recommend on a landing page. Okay, so I've dropped in a couple of pre-built sections, and you can see here that they are section, and then within the section, you get columns and then elements. And as you hover over each one of these, the different names change over here, and you get all your editing and styling on the right. All right, so one of the elements that I want to add, or let's say I want to put in a section in between these where I can put my form. So I'm going to put in a full width section. So this is not pre-built. I'm then going to add a 1 column. And then for my element, I'm going to add a form. Now I get to select from my forms, and there's my lead funnel 1 form. So now you can see, because I already created this, it exists, and now it's just dropped onto my page, which is why I like to create the lead magnet forms before I create the pages. All right, so obviously you would change it out to your logo, your information, whatever the title is. You might choose to either have a button here or remove it because you have the form down here. I mean, all of those are just different page building strategies, tactics. But if we're talking about how to build this page, when you click on this button, so let's first look here. So when I click on this image, you're going to see over here, I can have actions taken by the image. Also, this is where I'm going to change out my image. So I click on this and it's going to bring me to my media library. Hopefully you have a brand board built where you can just quickly select your logo. Maybe I'll actually, this one's not going to show up very well on a dark background, but we'll do that anyway. Then you can put in your alt text, you can change the size of it, you can do all kinds of things with that particular item. Then here, this is a simple paragraph. And so you can just highlight and change the text in this paragraph. This is just a little emoji before it. And you can see here that little icon, that little envelope emoji is right before that. You can choose that here. I can remove it. I can choose a different one. Maybe I want to put my YouTube link in there instead. And then you can choose the icon color. You can choose the font color, all with these picker options here. And you can see here, because I did build a brand board, my brand colors are previously in here, and I did a whole video about how to build your brand colors and your brand boards, which makes it way easier to update and edit these pages. All right, so this again is just a paragraph. So you can come in here and change this easily. Same thing here. You can just double click. You can change anything you want to, make it bold, make this one italic. Maybe this part we're going to do underlined. Now, the reason these disappeared when they went bold or italic is because of this color here. So we can change this back, and we can even make just those one words a different color. All right, so on to the button. With the button, we have a lot of actions here on the side. So get instant access is the actual text. We can add subtext underneath it. Both of those can be formatted separately for the regular text versus subtext. And you can see here how this changes. I'm going to bring that back down. You can choose between your different font types that you already have preloaded. You can also choose your font weights, letter spacing, and transformation. So we could make everything capitalized. We could make it normal, just the way it's typed in, or we can make it all lowercase, whatever you want for your brand. Now, the button actions are very important. So in this particular button case, we're opening the pop-up. We have lots of options here. You could send directly to a particular URL. You could have it download a file. You could have it show another element on this page. Maybe by clicking this button, the form automatically shows instead of opening in a pop-up or on another tab on their browser. You could scroll to a particular element. So maybe it just takes you down to that form. You could go to the next, you could go to any step in the funnel when you click this button, or you could go to the next step in this funnel. So as you can see, lots of other options, an email address, membership, etc. Your button background color is here. And again, I can play with this and make it more on brand. And then you can add icons leading or trailing. There we go. All right, so that's how to update the text, update the button, the actions. Now, with this button action, we actually have open pop-up currently, which is pretty popular. And so to actually update your pop-up is right up here. So your pop-up settings, and recently they added the option to have multiple pop-ups. You can choose which pop-up you send to. This is brand new functionality. So once the pop-up field is open on the right here, you're going to create new pop-up. So this is your pop-up settings. So when you click on this blue button, you get the overall settings for this pop-up. This is where you can disable it. You could close it on clicking on the outside so that they don't have to click the little X. This is one thing that trips people up quite a bit, is the show pop-up. Do you want only when they click the button? Do you want it to show up when they try to exit the page? Do you want a 5-second delay or a 10-second delay? You have those options here. A lot of times it defaults to on exit. And so people will be wondering, why is this pop-up keep coming up every time someone comes to this page? And this is why. You can choose the size. It could be the full width or super small, depending on what you're looking for. So we are going to set this to none. We are going to rename this as well to be our lead funnel 1. So it's all named the same as I mentioned before. So again, you can choose your positions. You can choose the background color. What you see right now is all pretty standard, but this overlay color is one thing you might want to change. Maybe when this is open, you want to completely disappear the background. It's pretty common to have it just sort of grayed out like this, is semi-transparent. So once we've decided, okay, we're happy with the pop-up functionality itself, now we can actually add content to the pop-up. So we're going to put in a row, and now we're going to add an element, and that element is likely going to be the form that we just created, also called lead funnel 1. And you can see here where, the name is nice to have, not really have to have, but it is nice to have. But you want to think about that when you're building your form. You want to think about naming it something or putting a name in there that makes sense no matter how you use that form, either standalone, on a pop-up, in the middle of a sales page. Either that, or you have to build multiple versions of the form. One that has no title because you're using it in the middle of a sales page, another one that has an image and a big long description because you're using it as a standalone form. Now, from here, we can actually edit this form if we wanted to. But the most important part is the button actions. So as I mentioned before, when we put this form inside of a funnel, we will now be able to control what that button does. It doesn't always have to go to that thank you message that we set up. So your options here are to use the action from the form builder, which is the thank you message, the very simple thank you message. We could send them to a custom URL when they're coming through this funnel. And so this does allow you to have different options. Okay, when they come through this funnel, they go to a specific URL. When they use the form itself, they just get a thank you message. So it could have different functionality on the exact same form, depending on how you share it with them. It could go to the next step in the funnel itself. So that's typically the one we do. Typically, we're building a landing page and then a confirmation or a thank you page. And so we're sending them to the next step when they actually click whatever button we have on our form. All right, so we have a page, we have a pop-up, we talked about buttons, we embedded a form, we have some contact information. It's not a super pretty page, but this would be functional if it had the right information on it. So we're going to click save. When you click save, the SEO metadata comes up over in this side panel. Now, you could also have gotten to it just by clicking the SEO metadata if you wanted to. It's a pretty good idea to update this data, give your page a title and a description, as well as a social media image, because these are the things that are going to show up when you share this page on social. So you probably have a specific image related to your lead magnet, a specific description, and a specific page title that you would want to put here. So the title and the page description, you just type them in, pretty self-explanatory. For the image, this is going to open up your media storage. And again, you're going to be able to put in whatever image you want to by just double clicking the image there. And then we update the SEO data. Might want to save again. If you have a domain connected, which I do not right now, you will then be able to hit publish. Without a domain connected, you cannot actually publish this page. But we can go preview it and we can see what this looks like. And it looks a lot like the page we just had up on our screen, but it's a little different seeing it in real life. Okay, so there's the landing page. Now we're going to click the back button and we're going to go back to our funnel. And so we now have one step in our funnel. Now we want to add that confirmation page we talked about. So we're going to add a new step. I'm going to call it thank you page. Again, you can call it whatever it is you would like. So now I'm going to create from blank. So again, you can drag and drop any sections that you want to put in here. I am just going to put in a column, add some text. Typically, I would put something like, thank you, please check your email for next steps. I would probably make it pretty big. I want to make sure. I would tell them to mark our emails as safe so that they don't end up in spam. The other thing we often put on these pages is a calendar to book an appointment, because a lot of times what they're signing up for is not an appointment. And that is really the next step in our sales process for most of our clients. So if I were to do that, I would add another block here. I would add another option and I would come down and I would find calendar. And you would pre-build your calendar as well, just like you did your form, so that you have something that you can drop in here. And a lot of times you're going to use the action from the calendar builder, but you could build another step after this, or again, send them to a custom URL, just like with a form, after they book an appointment. And this would just be, I would put some instructions in here while you're waiting, or since you seem interested in XYZ, here's a chance to book an appointment with us. We'd love to talk more with you about this. Kind of strike while the iron's hot, if you will. So now that this page is built, I'm going to click save. I don't care as much about my SEO metadata on the thank you page, because in reality, I don't want this page shared publicly. Now, one thing I didn't do on the previous page build was we did not look at mobile responsive. And this is something that you can change. So for example, 50 points might not be great for mobile, because I might want my calendar to be a little bit higher here. So for mobile, I might take this down to 30 just to make sure they can see the calendar as well, or even 40. And then when you go back to desktop, it's still 50, as you can see. And you see all of these pretty much have the option to switch between the two views. There's only two, not three. And it's not a variety. You can't pick those page breaks, but you do at least get the two view option where you can choose which size something is. I can even add in custom padding around this. So let's say on desktop, I want the padding around my calendar to be 40 on both sides. I want to bring that in a little bit. But then when I get to mobile, I feel like 40 is way too large. I want to make it a little more readable, a little more visible. So I'm going to take it down to 10 on mobile. So a lot of different things, even your alignments, you can see the different options here for mobile versus desktop, and you can play with all those. Always save your changes. Again, if you don't like something, you have version history here. You also have an undo button for anything you did immediately here. All right, now I'm going to go back to my funnel steps, and you can see now that I have a landing page and I have a thank you page. So that's how you build the funnel pages. So we've built the form and we've built the funnel pages. Next up, you will probably want to add workflows. Now, as I mentioned before on the form, you can add notifications and an immediate automated response when somebody completes a form right from the form settings. However, if you would like something a little more robust, which we do recommend several follow-up messages, then you're going to want to come to automations and you're going to want to create a workflow. So in this case, we're going to create a workflow from scratch. They do have an AI helper, but this one's going to be pretty basic, and I want to really show you guys how to build it. So we're going to build it ourselves. So as with everything else, we are going to click on the name up here and rename this with the same name as everything else. We're going to click save. So my trigger, this is what initiates this workflow in comparison to the actions that will be in the workflow. So the trigger for this workflow is completing the form. So I'm going to type in form, and then I have form submitted here as an option. As you can see, there are other forms that you could trigger a workflow from, but we have just an internal form that we built. Now, if you left it like this, where it said form submitted, it would actually, any form in the system would trigger this workflow. So you want to be very careful to make sure you continue on with the additional filters and settings anytime you're creating a trigger. So the filter form is, and it's lead funnel 1. So now the only form that will trigger this workflow is lead funnel one. And I actually like to rename all of my triggers and actions so that I can very quickly just look at my funnel and don't have to open every single one to see what they do. So now I'm going to know that this is triggered by lead funnel one form being submitted. Save my trigger, and you can see it right there. Okay, so now I'm going to add a step. So after that form is submitted, quite often we want to add a contact tag. And tags just let us know where people came from in the system. They give us ways to filter in our CRM. They're just a really good organizational tool. So I'm going to use the same exact name for my tags as well. Now, this name does not exist yet. So if I go in my tags to search and it says does not exist, but I can create a new tag right there. Save action. And again, instead of it just saying add tag, it says add lead funnel one tag. So I'm very clear. Next thing I want to do is probably send the contact an email or send myself a notification. Those two steps kind of go hand in hand, and you can do whichever one you want first. It's not really going to matter much, but I'm going to send an internal notification. I personally prefer email. You have the option of a desktop notification or SMS or WhatsApp message as well. So I'm going to send myself an email or whatever user I would like, and you can say a particular user, and it could be anyone that's already in the system. So very simply, new lead funnel one contact, and I'm going to put something similar in the message here. And then I'm going to use these custom values to fill in the variables of the contact details. So under contact, I'm going to choose full name. Then I'm going to put their email because we know that that was required. I am going to put phone, and company was the other thing that was required in there, or that was available in there. So this is the information for the new lead, and I'm sending it directly to myself or someone on my team via email, so you don't have to go searching for that. So I'm going to save that action. And there is an alternative. If you do not want to get email notifications or message notifications every time you have a new lead, but only when a lead becomes really interested, we actually have a whole process for lead scoring and pipeline management. And I did a whole video on that as well, which is a really great way to only get notified when your contacts or your leads reach certain benchmarks and have taken certain actions. So there's a whole workflow that you can build around that. And again, I do have a video on that as well. All right, so next we're going to send the contact an email. So we find the send email action. We click on that. Now in here, the from name and from email, and it says right here, it will use defaults if you don't put anything in there, which is typically what I do. I just let the system use the defaults, but you could change that if you wanted to have something specific in there. You can build this as it is, and there might be some changes to how this looks in the near future as far as the email builder within these workflows. Right now, the default that shows up here is like a quick message option. You can type in your subject, you can type in your message, or you can choose from pre-built templates. And if you choose one of these, it now becomes more of a branded email. And so this might be something you want to go make these emails as pre-built templates, and you would call it lead funnel one email. And I do a whole another video again on email building and how to create those templates, and even some recent changes around how the templates interact with the workflows. But you have these options. And when you choose a template, that is when the subject line will actually pre-fill, or you can go back to just doing a quick message option where you type everything in and put all the information in. I tend to lean toward the idea of building these templates and having them all be branded and consistent and a good look and feel. When you add one of these templates in, you can then click edit, and you have the option, so you can create sort of a base template for this particular lead magnet, and then you can come in and update the content in this particular email, and it will save it just in this one place. Or you can save it as a brand new template and have like version 1, version 2, version 3 for lead funnel 1. And all of this is drag and drop. And again, I go into this much more in a separate video, so I'm not going to necessarily cover it here, but you can put content in here. You can put next steps. You could drop your calendar link in here. You could put another video on how to use whatever it is that they downloaded or accessed. This first email is your greatest chance at connecting with this new lead. Your email opens will drop drastically within this lead conversion process as you go on. This first email is super important, so keep that in mind. That's really where you want to build your know, like, and trust factor, is as much as you can in that first email. And so I might label this something specific, welcome email 1, lead funnel 1, welcome email 1, that sort of thing. But I would name this along the naming convention and then save action. All right, I do like to save my workflows as I go, just to make sure in case something happens, I don't lose all my work. So we're just going to click save there. All right, so at this point, they filled out the form, they've been tagged, we've been notified, they've gotten the first email. Now we want to add a wait step. And we're probably going to wait at least a day. There are some other options outside of time delays. You could actually wait for a specific date or appointment. So if they were signing up for an event, maybe you want to wait till 3 days before the event to send them a reminder at some point in the process, or 1 day before to send them a reminder. So there are some other options here as far as the waits, but standard for a lead magnet would be wait a day. And we add that. And I always type in, like I said before, I always name the actions exactly what they are. So as I'm looking down this list, I can tell, oh, that's the tag being added. This is email 1. Oh, it's waiting 1 day. It doesn't just say wait, because then I go, well, how long is it waiting for? So I really like to name everything as I go through my workflows. All right, then we're going to add a second email. The nice thing about all of these pieces within the workflow is that you can actually just copy this and paste it here. And now we're going to rename it. It's going to be email 2. And again, we can change our content. We can go with a different template for this one. Save actions. We've got email 2. So we waited a day. Now we probably want to add another wait. A lot of times we're sending somewhere between 5 and 7 messages after every lead magnet. It's part of a whole funnel where we're trying to build that know, like, and trust. We're trying to explain to people why they should continue to follow us, continue to open our emails, hopefully book an appointment, and learn more about what we do. And there's lots of different methodology around this, storytelling, customer testimonials, reviews, different things you can add to these messages. And so we're not going to get too deep into the actual content strategy here. We're really looking more at how to build the workflow. So you're going to add email 3 next. And again, we can copy action, copy here. And in reality, we could have done copy all actions from here. And then it's going to wait another day and add email 3. And you always want to come in and rename them. And then we have email 4. All right, so once you've put all the emails in that you plan on sending after someone downloads your item or accesses your video or whatever your lead magnet is, at some point you're going to want to add them to your newsletter. And we do that based on a particular tag. So everyone with a particular tag called newsletter gets our newsletter. And this is why our system can be a CRM and also a marketing system, because we're not just sending our newsletter to everyone. It's people who specifically have this tag. This tag can be added and removed at any point in the process. And we typically add this tag toward the end of our lead funnel, because I wouldn't want them to start getting the newsletter sort of in the middle of these other messages. So we would do something like that. And I probably would add another day in between these steps, if not 2 or 3 even. But I just wouldn't want them to get multiple messages on top of each other, or 2 emails in the same day, or anything like that. So I would wait to add the newsletter tag until the end. All right, some other items that you could add in here are SMS messages as well. So maybe back here in the beginning, when you've got your internal notification, your first email, maybe you want to also send an SMS, because at this point, what happens if your email is going to spam? You may want to reach out to them this way as well. And so this is where you can add that SMS message. And maybe toward the end, you want to add another one, or maybe all of your messages are going to be SMS because you don't like email. And that's personal preferences, business practices. That's totally your choice. I tend to lean a little harder on email because I personally prefer to get that. It feels a little less intrusive for me. But depending on your content, maybe that's what you need. You need to be in front of your people a little bit more. You need to be in their hand a little bit more. And so that's where your SMS messages would come in. And those can all be fully customized. However, if you're adding SMS messages, remember you probably want to make that phone number required on your initial form, which I did not. I had removed that required piece. The other thing that you can add to your workflows is opportunity stages. So if you have opportunity pipelines built out, this would also be the place that you can add those. So I'm going to save my workflow here. And you'll notice I have not yet published it. So that is one thing that still needs to be done in order for this to work. And another little thing I'll mention before I leave here, I really like to add these sticky notes. These sticky notes will say things like, these sticky notes could have instructions about what needs to be done. The email content needs to be updated. We need more SMS messages. It could also have a link to the funnel page that triggers this. So it could say this workflow is triggered by the form on this page, or this form link triggers this workflow. If there's another workflow that removes people from this workflow, you may mention that in these sticky notes. I really like adding sticky notes to my workflows because of the fact that you can get so complicated in here with all of your instructions. And that's just how they look in there. All right, so now let's go back and let's take a look real quick at these opportunity pipelines that I was mentioning. So here under opportunities, you can see that we have built a marketing pipeline, and you might call it a prospecting pipeline. You might call it whatever you want to call it, but you have a new lead, a hot lead, a new booking. They attended a demo and you actually got a sale and then got the review. That's a pretty common pipeline for a sales pipeline process. So at the point where they've filled out that lead magnet form, you may want to say, well, that's a new lead. So we would add that in the automation. So again, if we go back to our automation, and we go to our lead funnel one, you can see it's still in draft. We're just going to click on that. So back here, internal notification, email one, SMS, at any point really in here in the beginning, you could add an opportunity stage action. Now you could start by looking and finding the opportunity. So if they already exist in your pipeline, you may want to exclude them from this, or you may want to just create a new opportunity if you don't mind having a potential duplicate in there. So we have create opportunity. It's in the marketing pipeline, and you can choose which pipeline you have in here. We're going to add field. So the name would typically be the contact name. The pipeline stage is new lead, as we saw. If you have a value, you could put that in. Let's say these new leads are $100 value. Maybe they're $1,000 value, and the status is open. And these items are all optional. Really, the only things I would worry too much about is probably the opportunity name. I would connect to the contact name using those fields, using these custom fields. And the pipeline stage, I would make sure they're in that new lead stage because that's really where they belong. The rest of this stuff is totally optional. And you could say which pipeline you're putting it in here. Again, to keep things clean so that when you're looking at this, you know exactly what's happening. So now you've added them to your pipeline opportunity. So this is a pretty standard format for any lead magnet. The things that we would include, the notifications we would include. Some other options is if you are trying to get them to take another action within these emails, you may add a goal at some point. And so a goal could look like booking an appointment, just like we had on that thank you page. So your goal event could be that they clicked a particular link or a particular tag is removed or appointment status. And this is not uncommon. We would say on the test calendar, because that was the one that we dropped on that thank you page. And we would say that the appointment was confirmed. And if they reach this goal, what do we want them to do? We would say probably continue anyway. because we have the newsletter tag next. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first, to clarify what a goal is. So anywhere in the funnel, if they meet this goal of the test calendar appointment is confirmed, they have a confirmed appointment on the test calendar, they're going to drop to this point of where we're putting the goal. One of the problematic things about that is that if they come in, they submit the lead form, and they have already had an appointment on that test calendar, they're not going to get any of this. They're not going to get the tag. You're not going to get the notification, the email, the SMS, none of that's going to happen. They're going to drop all the way to the goal. So that is something to keep in mind, and maybe a reason to have a specific calendar to this lead magnet so that you know they would not have previously had this appointment. So we're going to hit save. And now you can see we have our appointment goal. And I'm just going to rename that. And so this is where they will drop to as soon as they have a confirmed appointment on that test calendar that we had put on the thank you page. Now, it usually doesn't happen within a few seconds of them actually going through the process. So chances are all of these things that happen immediately are going to happen. But they could book that appointment within 5 or 10 minutes. And then that means that they're not going to get email 2, 3, 4. They're not going to get any of those because they're going to drop to your appointment goal. Once they drop here, they are going to get the newsletter tag. So that's still a good thing. So that is just kind of a bonus item that we sometimes like to add to our workflows. All right, so before I leave here, I'm going to make sure I save. And after I publish, I have to save again. Now, when I go back out to my workflow list, you will see that my lead funnel 1 is published. Now, when your lead funnels are published and your messages are in there, you do have the opportunity for some statistics here. Delivered, opened, clicked, replied, and bounce rates show up very simply right below your lead funnel, email versus SMS. And when you're inside your funnel, you can actually look at individual messages. So when you open the message, we had our edit action. We have statistics over here. So you can actually look at each individual email as well for those stats to see what people are actually responding to. So that is one place that you can see statistics after you've turned on your workflow and started sending all these messages and using this lead magnet workflow. Now, if we go back to sites and back to our funnels, I just want to remind you as well that under your funnel pages, you also had stats. And now that we have those pages built, those steps, you can see that you're actually going to get views and opt-in rates for each step within your funnel as well. So these are going to be the first place that you look for data to see how many people are landing on your different pages. And then you're going to be able to go into your workflow and see how many people are actually opening those emails and clicking on those links, or those text messages and clicking on those links. So that's where you're going to be able to see all your data also around your funnels. All right, I hope you found that useful. As a quick recap, we covered funnel pages, building funnel pages, including the forms that go right on them, both as embedded forms, pop-up forms, and links. We covered how to make an automated workflow that will tag people, send them SMS and email messages, send internal notifications, as well as help with pipeline stages, automatically adding them to your opportunity pipelines. And then the follow-up process of sending multiple messages after someone opts in so that you stay connected with them and then eventually put them into your nurture sequence with, say, a newsletter tag or something similar. There are lots of other things you can do in GoHighLevel as well. There's a whole reputation process. There's a whole lead scoring process. And I have many other videos on those things and more. So if you liked this video, I hope you will subscribe, comment, let me know what else you'd like to see. And if you'd like more information about Marketecs Engines, the links are in the description, and I'm happy to share. And I'd love for you to schedule an appointment to learn more. Thanks.